Let's go to our first conversation this Monday afternoon. The federal government now has paused the implementation of the new annual levies imposed on private enterprises by the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, FRCN. This is a developing story, and following strong opposition from industry leaders, particularly Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN, and the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Mrs. Jumoke Oduwole, disclosed this decision after the Ministerial Consultative meeting on annual dues for public interest entities under the FRCN's Amendment Act of 2023. MAN had deemed the financial service charges as exorbitant and it's a significant burden on manufacturing companies. But Mrs. Oduwole clarified that the pause is for a review purpose, not a suspension, to comply with the legislative pass by the National Assembly. Now, in our own understanding, a suspension would be a contravention of the legislation that is duly passed by the National Assembly, but a pause is an administrative process simply to review in line with what government and stakeholders have discussed last week. Well, let me introduce my first guest this afternoon. We are talking to the president of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa. He starts this week with us for more on this developing story. Good afternoon, Mr. Idahosa, and happy celebrations to you.
Good afternoon, Tolu. How are you doing?
Well, I'm very well. In the studio, as always, coming up with big stories around the world of business. It's good to have you in despite the holidays. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tolu.
All right, then. I think we should start clearly with your reaction to this. There's been this back and forth with regards to tariffs in recent times. While we talk about the ease of doing business on one side, we have the issues of tariffs coming from either the MPA, either the customs service, and there's this back and forth, of course, from the likes of the private sector, which you preside over one of them, very significant, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. What is your reaction to some of these moves in general before we now go to this issue around FRCN specifically?
Well, thank you, Tolu. Just to give the proper perspective, the federal government has about 900 ministries, departments, and agencies. And if every agency starts to put up one levy or the other, whenever they have a regulatory window or law to do it, it means that the businesses in Nigeria will have to be battling with up to 900 levies and fees and whatever any agency of the federal government decides at any point in time to just put up. Now you come down to the states. All these businesses that are the targets of this levy operate in one of the 36 states. Now, state governments come up with, let's say state governments come up with their own set of levies from all their agencies. And of course, local government comes up with their parking and whatever local charges. So you will have mayhem. I mean, it's not possible to run a business in an environment where you don't know when the next levy is going to come from which agency that is just decides to put up a levy. There is a federal government agency with the statutory right to raise revenues for all the activities of the federal government, and that is the Federal Inland Revenue Service. In most countries of the world, the Federal Inland Revenue Service collects all the revenues and uses it to finance all government businesses. So you really have one agency or the other setting up these kinds of levies that we have in Nigeria. Some of the countries in the world that have the best education system do not have education levy. They fund their education from their main budgets. They do not have a post office levy or a security levy or an IT levy or an FRC levy. The Financial Reporting Council exists in most countries of the world. They do not have a special levy. It's a government agency funded from the budget of the country. So that is just the point. In a situation where you run a business, you know there are 36 states, 900 federal agencies, and you don't just know when another levy is going to prop up somewhere in your business at any time. So that is the background to this situation we are dealing with. So it's really up to governments to decide whether you want to allow the agencies to keep fixing all these levies, and you tell the Federal Inland Revenue Service, don't bother, all the agencies are collecting revenue to take care of themselves. This is the big picture, Tolu. So that is where what is all this about. This is all about, really. It's not just the Financial Reporting Council. That is the big picture that the businesses are facing. That's what we see.
At a time where the economy is recovering, looking at our GDP figures bouncing back, we just had the rebased inflation figures, and of course we're monitoring activities by the day. That wouldn't be a step in the right direction. Where do we draw a balance between trade facilitation and revenue generation?
Look, I think we just keep our eyes on the big picture. This same government set up the tax reform committee, or Oyedele committee. One of the main mandates of that committee is to reduce the multiplicity of taxes and levies by all agencies in order to significantly improve the business environment that enables businesses to be able to predict their taxes due to government. Because we now have, at the last count at the beginning of the Oyedele committee, over 100 tax items. And the mandate of that committee to reduce those to a single digit, not more than 10.
Yeah. So
that as a business in Nigeria, you have a list of 10 taxes that you will pay throughout your year. You make a budget that these taxes will be due, we will plan to pay them. And that is how you improve the ease of doing business. Because Nigeria is one of over 200 countries in the world that are competing for the same investors, even Nigerian investors. Nigerian investors have an option to invest in Nigeria or go to Ghana or Angola or Benin Republic. And if their tax regimes are better there, what stops me from going to invest in another country? Not to talk of the foreign direct investment we are spending so much effort to attract into Nigeria. These investors operate in all the countries around the world, and they understand the way tax regimes work. That there's an overriding policy to reduce the number of taxes in most countries, and these countries, most of them collect far more tax than Nigeria because they have fewer taxes and they concentrate on efficient collection of those few taxes and ensure that they have full coverage over the country. So if the Federal Inland Revenue Service, for example, is only collecting less revenue from less than 40% of the companies in Nigeria, and you say, okay, government is not collecting enough revenue, so every agency, you go and also collect revenue. That is where we are heading with this kind of situation we have ourselves. So the solution is for government to make the Federal Inland Revenue and the state inland revenues very, very efficient, able to cover the country, raise enough revenue to finance all government agencies, and not push every government agency to be a regulator and a revenue collector, in the case of the Federal Financial Reporting Council and many other regulatory agencies that are now adding revenue collection to their regulatory agencies. You also have government agencies set up to provide services, now raising huge levies that turn them into more of revenue generating agencies rather than service providing agencies. The immigration, for example, is a service providing agency. So that is where the conversation should focus on. How much effort does government want to put into improving the business environment and ensuring that revenue collection does not become a huge impediment to improving the business environment by uncoordinated levies by practically every government agency that wants to do it, without looking at the wider implications of that, these random attempts to collect revenue by all manner of government agencies.
So my next question, for example, now, you know, diving deep into the FRCN, we also saw a report that, according to the House of Representatives, and why I'm saying this is because some will say some of them are legitimate. They are signed, are backed by the law. They says the Financial Reporting Council Act remains in force until amendment. And even this pause or suspension, some say it's just for a review. That's not going to stop the act or the act itself, yes, moving forward. Now, what do we do? What sort of conversation are you having? Yes, as LCCI, as MAN, as NECA and all of that, I think there needs to be a conversation around all of this. The economy needs the private sector to achieve inclusive growth. So where do we go from here when we also have laws backing some of these levies and taxes that we're talking about?
So that's why I'm not trying to focus on that particular law.
Okay.
Because that same law for the Financial Reporting Council is similar or is parallel with many other laws that are authorizing all manner of government agencies to raise levies. So once we focus on the primary issue, it's easy for government to go back and say, look, the way we are doing it now is not right.
Okay.
Where are all these laws that authorize all various government agencies to raise revenues left and right? Let's get all these laws together. Let's make the necessary amendments within the concept of the Oduwole Committee that says all taxes in Nigeria should be reduced to 10. So if right now government finds out that maybe 100, 200 taxes and levies around the place, the way forward is to consolidate a law after the passing of these 4 tax bills and revenue, have in our annual financial act. Every year we have a finance act. In the next finance act or a finance act at this time, we can still put a finance act before National Assembly and say that all these levies around collecting levies, fees by all the various government agencies, there's a coordinating office in the presidency that can bring all this together and sit with the Federal Revenue Service and come with a law that consolidates all of this and builds this into these 4 tax bills or as an amendment of these 4 tax bills. Then we have a very coordinated picture. The private sector knows which levies are left and which levies are no more. And going forward, government should be extremely careful in passing new laws around levies. As much as possible, not allowing more agencies to collect levies, but rather get funded from the federal budget. That is the way to go. There are conversations going on, Tulu, I can tell you, very intense conversations going on between the government and the business membership organizations. Man, you mentioned NECA, NASIMA, Lagos Chamber of Commerce. There are conversations going on. The Minister of Trade and other ministers and agencies, including the Federal Revenue Service, they understand what the business community is saying. Those conversations are quietly going on. We expect to see a concerted effort to reduce the amount of confusion that we have right now. But it's just that the business community is forced to do firefighting. Whenever a levy jumps up like this, they are forced to go to government and say, here we go again, yet another levy. While we are working, the Oduwole Committee is working very hard to consolidate all of this. The right word was mentioned, the pause. There should be a pause on random collection of levies by various government agencies. Let's have a pause. Let's consolidate them, look for all of them, all the laws that give them rights to collect this, put them together and have a single omnibus amendment, Finance Act amendment that puts this together, and a decision is now made that, okay, some levies should remain, and here they are. All other levies should go. Legislatively, there's no other way by making a law that takes care of the situation in a holistic manner.
Interesting conversation as always. But before I let you go, Mr. President, the ease of doing business in its entirety has been marred with challenges, and many will tell you there are still opportunities around it. What do you make of that too? That's talking about PEBEC itself, because at the time we saw a lot of positives around their ratings and the World Bank assessments and all of that. But are we still on that same pace if you are to assess it around the business community?
Definitely, definitely. So the business community is very happy with the work of PEBEC. They are very happy with the work of the current Minister of Trade. As I hinted, there are very intense conversations going on all the time. A lot of improvements have been made. Some of them because they have succeeded. The media, a media event is because there's a problem. So a lot of problems are solved, and nobody comes to the media to shout. So the government has done a lot to improve business in various areas, in a lot of areas, and we commend government for that. We continue to commend government for that. It's just that, like I said, a fire department does not jump out into the streets if all is well. This is just a case of a fire in the system that has attracted the business membership organizations to the organized private sector to cry out to say this should be dealt with. But there's no doubt that since the resumption of this administration, a lot has been done to improve the operating environment. But improving the business environment is not something that is peculiar to developing countries, maybe because Nigeria is an emerging economy. Even the most advanced economies in the world are still struggling to improve their operating environment. It's just that the issues are different. So it is not something to look at as if PEBEC has an end date where it will have solved all the problems in Nigeria as far as the business of operating environment, and we can say, oh, well done, PEBEC, you have more work to do. It's not going to happen anytime. As some problems are solved, others are coming, and the growth of the economy by itself it will bring other issues. For example, now we are a big player in the international crude oil and refining market. The dynamic has changed. So the regulatory issues that government is going to deal with in that space are going to be different, because government now needs to empower our petroleum refining industry to be very competitive worldwide. Previously, our concern was just how much revenue we can get from our crude. Now, there's concern of how much revenue we can get from refined products. What should government do to enable that industry to be very competitive, the refining industry that's emerging? So there will always be issues that the PEBEC and government agencies responsible for improving the enabling environment will always do. It's not as if they will finish the job in one day. I think we should commend what they are doing. We commend them quite often, and we'll continue to work with PEBEC to address issues as they arise.
Indeed. In 2 minutes, what's your outlook? I know LCCI is always having this economic review and all of that, but the first quarter is gone, and of course we are starting the second quarter from tomorrow. What do you make of the outlook generally?
Yes, the economy is improving. The key parameters are improving. Growth, we are looking at closer to 4%, away from being very close to 3%. We probably are likely to see more than 4% this year. And that's very positive. The other positive thing is, as a country, we have significantly improved our energy security.
Okay.
So whether it is aviation fuel, whether it's all other fuels, Nigeria as a country is in 1 year very, very far from where it has been for over 40 years. Where it could not be sure where the next barrel of refined products are going to come from. So those basic improvements are there. But of course, there's still a massive, what has been described as multidimensional hunger in the country that has to be dealt with. But there is surely, the outlook is positive. at the macro level, and we hope that it will begin to trickle down over time to Nigerians to see the effect of that improvement.
Mr. Gribeli Dahosa is the president of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He's been talking to us, of course, around the economy and issues affecting the private sector and speaking around some government policies. Thank you so much for spending your Monday afternoon with us, your holiday. We really do appreciate this. Enjoy the rest of your day, sir.
Thank you.